My big sister, Kara, is the strongest person I know. I've said before from this pulpit that in my family of origin, I am actually the shy one. I am the one whose light shines the least obviously among my best beloved, and among all of us, my sister Kara is the strongest. Now, to be clear, she's shortish and has these little white hands that are as soft as a baby's butt, and I could beat her up in a second. But that is not what we mean by strong, is it? And my big sister Kara was always the strongest one I knew, including when we were kids and she was about 12. And she decided through her own discernment process that she no longer believed in original sin, and yet our family were faithful sitters in the front row at St. Matthew's Catholic Parish. And so my big sister Kara designed a deeply powerful silent protest in which she wore only black every Sunday and shot peace signs across the sanctuary when the priest told us to pass some sign of God's peace. That's my big sister, Kara. And the strongest person I know, the one who always sat me down and told me I would survive when minor crises crossed my path, usually minor crises that utterly paled in comparison to whatever she was facing down, the one who to this day always tells me, you know, McDonald women do not quit. The strongest person I know took a job this fall as the building's one and only art teacher at McDaniel Elementary School in South Philly, serving hundreds of students from kindergarten through the 8th grade in one building who had never before had arts education made available to them through their public school system. Now, my sister is a veteran public school teacher. This is not her first rodeo. And the one question she remembers the interviewer for the Philadelphia public school system asking her before she signed on to be a new teacher in those schools was simply this: have you ever had a student look you in the eye and tell you to F off? Like twice a day, my sister laughed, and she got the job. Now, let's be clear. McDaniel Elementary School stands within the boundaries of one of the poorest, most underinvested neighborhoods in the city. The student population is about 75% African American, with Hispanic students comprising the bulk of the remainder. My sister, as aforementioned, is a shortish white lady with very soft hands. And to be clear on a second point, she was not going into that place to be anybody's white savior. She is tough and talented. She's called to teach and to learn at the same time. And what she found in that school, starting in the very first week she was there, was a system that was designed not only to fail those students in their learning, but to endanger them for the span of their entire lives. See, here's the thing, and these are my words, not hers. She was living and working inside the systemic disinvestment in public education that our nation has allowed and perpetuated at the very highest levels of government. And that set of high-level choices by powerful people has created nothing less than a new caste system in which resources, opportunity, and even bodily safety are withheld from a highly targeted and racially targeted many, so that a few at the top can prosper even more than they already do. And my sister was there with her big blue eyes and her open heart and her paint kits and her paper mache caught smack dab in the middle of it, as a colleague of hers recently testified before a meeting of the board of the Philadelphia Public Schools. This year, the city of Philadelphia tried to save money by consolidating elementary and middle schools in the poorest neighborhoods in the city. meaning that each and every classroom teacher had upwards of 40 students in each class with no support staff to assist them. When violence began to erupt in an utterly uncontrollable way, yet utterly predictable way, violence not just between students, but among teachers and students, parents, and the outside parties who found their way unchecked into that school, the teachers were told that no one is coming to save you, that no help is coming. Whole months went by when my sister did not teach an art class once to those students who had never to that point had access to art education, when those students did not get access to creativity they so desperately deserved. Whole months went by when my sister did not teach an art class once because so many teachers had quit, had had anxiety attacks, had fled out of their own classrooms in tears. She was called in every single day with 5 or 10 minutes notice to sub into classrooms of all ages with no lesson plan and no preparation, and told in so many words that her only job was, and I quote, to keep them under control. As if they, the students, were the enemy. My sister called me terrified so many times this fall. Not just because of what the system was doing to the students, not even because of the blood she was literally wiping off the floor of her classroom every day, but because of what the system was doing to the teachers. A system designed to make them focus only on the most dangerous individual student behavior instead of on the overarching brokenness that caught them all in its grasp. She heard teachers overtly and covertly threaten violence to their own students. Not because either teacher or student were evil or even bad, but because the system was twisting them all up into its own violent image. Over and over and over again, that system tried to make it about the individual students and their individual behavior when nobody, not the students, not the teachers, not the parents, or the community itself, had a glimmer of a chance of behaving any differently, when the whole thing was designed to rob them of their humanity. And so my sister called me on the phone time and time again this fall, not just because she was afraid for the students, but because she didn't want the system to steal her humanity too. Because of course what was happening, what is happening at McDaniel Elementary and all over this country, it was never about individuals. It was and is about the system. It wasn't the students or the teachers or the parents who created that system or nurtured it or sustained it. It was decisions made by leaders at the regional and the national level that resulted in increased class size, that pulled public funding, funneled it into private charters, that did nothing as the failed war on drugs decimated communities, and the criminal legal system continues to prey on Black families for profit. It was not the students, it was the system. And when people say, I don't vote, I say, tell it to the students at McDaniel Elementary whose school board needs your wisdom. It never was the individuals. It always was the system, and all of us are a part of it, whether we want to be or not, whether it's pleasant to think about or not. We are a part of the system too, because of course, the Philadelphia public schools, it's just an example. It's like what I have to preach about today, because it's on my heart. But you and I, we both know you could pull almost any system in this broken democratic society of ours and tell a similar story. The same systemic issues that are at play at McDaniel Elementary, where a student is lucky to get through the day without bleeding unchecked on the floor, are the exact same systemic issues that are at play right here in Montgomery County, where our own public school system right now is undergoing a boundary analysis that is motivated in part by the widening achievement gap between white identified students and the black and brown learners that will soon be the majority of our county's elementary school population. Yes, the widening achievement gap. Every year it gets bigger. The space between what our white students are learning and achieving and the opportunities made available to our black and brown learners every year, right here, the same system is at play. And right now, this fall, right here, school board meetings debating solutions that might provide answers to that widening gap have descended time and time again. You have seen it. They have descended time and time again into nothing less than public displays of white fragility and the visible performance of terror on the part of the already privileged as they imagine what it might take to share that privilege more widely right here. None of this is theoretical. None of this is a matter of opinion. Some of you have your very lives on the line. The system of education in this country is designed to privilege some and abandon others. And the school-to-prison pipeline is not a liberal concept cooked up in an ivory tower think tank. It is a caste system by another name that is channeling our children to death, and it is getting worse. Just after Christmas, the strongest person I know turned in her resignation to the Philadelphia Public Schools. She couldn't sleep. Her blood pressure was all over the place. She worried that a student was going to get hurt on her watch, and there was nothing she could do to prevent it. Most of all, she worried about what it was doing to her soul. And her students who had come to know her, even though every teacher they knew and loved seemed to leave them, were still surprised that she was going. I suppose a few were sad, but one elementary-aged boy summed it up in a way that she will never forget. He was happy for her. "Good for you, Miss McDonald," he said. "I'm glad you can get the hell out of this place." "I'm glad you can," he said. With a loving heart and no irony, "I am glad you can get the hell out of this place, Miss McDonald," he said to her, even knowing that he himself could not. She will carry the grace of that with her, the grace of that young prophet, and she will never let it go. What a privilege it was for her to leave, to sustain her soul by walking away. What a privilege. And though it has been difficult, she will land on her feet. She already is, really, and what a privilege that is too. The way out, the way on, the option to opt out of the system before it breaks you, what a privilege that is. And I am so grateful every day that she had it, even knowing that so many of our siblings on the journey do not. I was in awe of her for working within the system to make it better. And I do not blame her in the least for exercising the privilege to opt out of that broken system. In fact, I prayed that she would. It is not a character fault to have privilege and to use it to protect yourself. It is a survival strategy, and a strategy that some, but not all, have. Opting out is an option we should all have, just as we should all have the option to keep opting into the system, to stay in it for so long as we're doing something in that system that serves to move it. It is possible to leave a broken system with a whole heart. It is possible to stay in it and maintain your wholeness. What is not possible from a moral perspective or a faith perspective or a human perspective is to pretend that the system isn't there at all. I don't do systems. It's something that a very prominent fellow ministerial colleague said recently in a widely shared piece of writing that was passed from hand to hand throughout our association. "I don't do systems," this person said. "I only work with people," they implied. I only speak person to person with individuals. I drill down to the personal level in my ministry, this person implied. I meet individuals where they are. I don't do systems in my ministry, they declared. I just work here. And I try to love everyone and treat everyone the same, and I don't get involved in politics. Really? Ask Jesus what he thinks about not doing systems. When the system is crushing your people, how can I show that I love you? Jesus' beloved disciples asked. Feed my sheep, he said. Stop staring at me and looking for answers. Go out and find out what makes people hungry and do something about it. If you want to show your love, show it in the world, he demanded. You remember how once I was preaching a whole sermon about some Jesus-y thing? And I could read in your faces that you were getting really nervous that I'd said the word Jesus too many times. And so I started calling him Bob the Peasant Revolutionary. Well, guess what Bob said about not doing systems? He said that it is our work in the world to manifest love in the system, and yes, sometimes to manifest that love in such a fiery passion that it might break down the system from within. This is why it makes me incandescent with rage. I am controlling myself right now. Incandescent with rage when people of faith blithely declare that nothing in their worship informs the way they interact with systems which make people hungry in the first place, and that addressing systemic injustice is too political. Incandescent with rage, my friends. I don't do systems. What nonsense. It is one thing to have the privilege of leaving a broken system with a whole heart. It is another thing entirely to pretend like the system doesn't exist just because it is currently working out pretty well for you. And that is the heart of what I have to say today, really. That the only ones among us who can pretend that the systems of oppression and injustice all around us are not real and operative in our lives are the people with so much accumulated privilege that those systems are stacked to benefit them. You can say, and I mean like the universal you, not any one of you. You can say that white privilege or the leveraging of the economy to concentrate wealth on the already wealthy through the perpetuation of generational poverty in rural America, or the systemic disinvestment in black and brown children across this country doesn't exist or isn't important. You could say those things if you yourself are swimming in so much privilege that you can't even tell the ocean is all around you. You can tell yourself that whatever you've got is all about individual choices and Ayn Rand-ish survival of the fittest capitalism, so long as you have had the option to make choices all along. What a privilege it is to call for civility and politeness and the maintenance of one's own comfort when you are already in a fundamentally civil, polite, and comfortable place. And what a crime it is to sell the false narrative to even the people who are being crushed under power's heel. And I do not say this to you, the people I love, as some sort of morally pure prognostication. I say it to myself, to the parents at my own child's school, fighting for more privilege in a privileged place that I benefit from. I say it to the comfortably middle-class life that this job you gave me allows, to the ladder of privilege I have climbed through the honor of being your minister. I say it to myself that none of us who are okay came by this by bootstraps alone, and that if you are hurting, if you are hanging on to the edges of the economy, if you are marginalized and cast aside for the sake of other people's comfort, you probably do not need your minister to remind you that you're caught in a web you did not weave. Everyone should have the freedom to leave a broken system with a whole heart. Everyone should have the freedom to stay in the system long enough to change it. None of us should be trapped. And as long as we are, as long as that child could look my sister in the eye and tell her with deep authenticity how happy he was for her survival when he himself had no such strategy, none of us are free to pretend the system doesn't involve us too. And I think about all of you. I think about some of you who have given 40 years to the federal government, the State Department, the EPA, intelligence services, the military. I think of those of you who are teaching. I think of those of you who are building peace in the schools and fighting to keep doing it. I think of those of you who are holding the system together while speaking your truth in the best ways you know how. I think of all of you who do this work year after year after year, only to see some parts of that system you serve turn to erase everything you gave your professional lives to. And I ache with you. I see you. I think of you who are patients and doctors who are on the edge of the healthcare system trying to hold on, and those of you who are fighting to spend more than 5 minutes with the patients you care about, who are wrestling with the insurance companies so that you too can afford to come back and do it another day. I think about you. I think of all of you with small businesses trying to navigate the taxation system and the dance between regulation and expansion. I think of all of you in all of the systems and the overlapping and absent levels of privilege you can deploy to make it through the day. And I think of the biggest systems of our country and our world, and the fact that it is constitutionally impossible for a human being to opt out of everything that we careen toward together. And I wish for us courage, wherever we are in the system. I wish for us the strength to look the system in the eye, just as the strongest person I know did this fall. From inside or outside the system, from its edges or its center, I wish us all the courage to get out, to persist, to disassemble from within, to speak up, because we can have full hearts in the midst of broken systems. And having full hearts in the midst of broken systems does not necessarily require great skill or the right words or moralizing declarations of what is right and what is wrong. What it requires of us is continued engagement with the realities that hold us all. Courage, the poet David Whyte has written, is the measure of our own heartfelt participation with life. Courage, he goes on, is the measure of our own heartfelt participation with one another, with a community, a work, a future we can only create together. And so he says, to be courageous is to seat our feelings deeply in the world. To be courageous is to stay close to the way we are made. We are made to go at this together. We are made to be collective beings. We are made for one another and not for ourselves alone. We are made not for the betterment of our own lives, but for the whole damn system, even when it is guilty as hell. And systems do not change by one person sitting in front of another person and declaring their love. They change when we acknowledge that the system is broken, when leaders with whole hearts rise up to move those systems. Systems change when we admit that they are there in the first place. And courage requires of us at least that, the starting point. A heartfelt participation in a community and a work that is so much larger than ourselves alone. We are one another's. The strongest person I know is mine. And together we are called to stay close to the way we are made, for and with each other, courageously interconnected through it all.